K. Polk from the Polk ancestral home in Columbia, Tennessee. American Presidents' Life Portraits on C-SPAN. Now we'll look at Serbian news coverage of NATO airstrikes on Yugoslavia from government-controlled Radio Television Serbia in Belgrade. This portion of the news was recorded yesterday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time and translated here at C-SPAN in Washington, D.C. It's about a half hour.
You're watching primetime news of Radio Television Serbia. Good evening. Today in Belgrade, the President of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia and the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, Milosevic, received today Lieutenant General Pavkovic, Commander of the Third Army, and the Commander of the Police Forces for Kosovo, Major General Sreten Lukic. After the detailed briefing, attended also by the President of Serbia, Milan Milutinovic, the Chief of Staff, Dragoljub Ojdanic, and other officials, it was concluded that the tasks pertaining to the defense of the country, the anti-terrorist operations, and the security in Kosovo are successfully carried out. Members of the armed and police forces have, with self-sacrifice and dedication, stopped the greatest aggressor on earth from occupying a single foot of our soil. At the same time, they refused all of the attempts of the terrorists to penetrate into our country while internally destroying all troops and headquarters of this terrorist organization, self-appointed as KLA. Throughout Kosovo, there is civilian government and all social functions are in place. Health protection, food and medicine is provided for the citizens, many of whom left their homes due to the bombing and the terrorist actions. There has been a structure that, with the end of the aggression, can help to all citizens return to their homes. It was stated that all of the required tasks have been accomplished under very difficult circumstances, given the fact that the leaders of KLA, from the very first of the aggression, and with open support of the highest NATO country representatives, called for a terrorist war on all structures of the government. They intended to create an effect of a general uprising in Kosovo. In these bombing conditions, this led to serious conflicts in many towns, damaging a lot of infrastructure throughout Kosovo. Especially difficult was the battle of the police forces against urban terrorism. Parallel with their security operations, police forces arrested several hundred criminals who had taken part in violent crimes, robberies and other felonies, and who represented danger for the population at large. State organs acted in accordance with the law and impartially in order to protect the property and the personal safety of the citizens. It was also noted that these measures have simply put an end to such activities. Court-martials have, in accordance with the rules of war, sentenced a number of these offenders to prison terms between 5 and 20 years. The commanders of the armed and police forces expressed all other measures that need to be undertaken, pledging to carrying out consistently, legally, professionally and completely. The priority task at this moment, as President Milosevic stated, is to continue safeguarding our freedom, as well as the security, legality, stability, public order, and the freedom of movement throughout Kosovo, as a prerequisite for the functioning of all the public and state organs in the interest of all citizens, regardless of their ethnicity and faith. The intensified diplomatic activity allows us to begin to see the end of this aggression against Yugoslavia. This is the opinion of many international politicians, including some who are directly involved in these criminal attacks. This estimate is supported by several key elements: the release of the 3 American soldiers, the latest peace proposals from Belgrade, and the optimism of Viktor Chernomyrdin after last night's discussions in Washington. After his discussion with Clinton on the way to resolve the crisis in Kosovo in political way and escape the cul-de-sac created by this aggression against Yugoslavia, the special envoy of the Russian president, Viktor Chernomyrdin, announced we are closer to a diplomatic solution. He expressed this to a large group of journalists in front of the White House after a meeting with Clinton that lasted for about an hour and a half. He also noted that he was going to continue discussion with Al Gore. Responding to the journalists, he said that this is a very complicated situation, but they will continue to find a solution for it. We have a hope. And then he proceeded to confirm that the discussions encompassed possible end of the bombing. This is a key question, stated the Russian envoy, who spoke to the journalist not so much about the content of the letter of Yeltsin to President Clinton, but this is a letter that requires an immediate stop to the crisis. Other details are not known. It is quite obvious that the electronic media in the US have tried to block all of the news about this very important event, avoiding thus that through the TV and radio people could hear about this meeting, while throughout all of the other media the information was very scanty. Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Avdeyev, stated that the political leaders of G8 countries agreed that the process of the regulation of the crisis in Kosovo be moved into the hands of the UN. This high official noted that after the Bonn meeting, any foreign presence in Kosovo from now on can be carried out only within the framework of UN. Thus, we no longer talk about NATO forces or ground troops, but simply that all foreign presence will be under UN jurisdiction. Avdeyev added that there was an adoption of a document acceptable to Russia, and now it's up to the foreign ministers to agree on the transferring of the authority to the UN. The ministerial should be held already next Thursday in Bonn. Moscow awaits impatiently the results of the talks between President Clinton and the special Russia envoy Chernomyrdin, who relayed a personal message from the Russian President Boris Yeltsin with suggestions for political solution of the crisis. After a 5-hour discussion with Clinton, the special Russian envoy Chernomyrdin noted that the US president expressed readiness to consider a possible end to the bombing campaign. Right now, we have to consider under what conditions this would happen, within which framework, and to what extent. There are many details that need to be specified, added Chernomyrdin, stressing that there should be no confusion whatsoever because the price paid so far has been tremendous. Chernomyrdin today discussed the resolution of the Kosovo crisis also with the Japanese Prime Minister Obuto, who expressed Japan's support for the constructive policy of Russia, as well as that they are ready to work further on a possible solution. The special Russia envoy is also to meet General Secretary of UN Kofi Annan, who has also said on his part that a peaceful political solution for Kosovo crisis will be reached. If NATO military actions continue, though, Russia will have to re-examine or freeze all of its military and technological cooperation with NATO countries, stated the Russian Minister of Defense Sergeyev, who is currently attending the summit of the Ministers of Defense of Northern Europe taking place in Norway. He also said they would have to re-examine existing armed treaties for Europe, especially regarding conventional arms, which could seriously endanger the old continent. The events in Yugoslavia show that military actions as an instrument of policy chosen by NATO lead nowhere, while they have also reversed the relations between NATO and Russia to almost Cold War parameters. The only solution is to stop the bombing and find political solution. This was also noted in the discussion between the Prime Minister Primakov and the German Interior Minister Schily, who stressed that the peace initiatives of Russia can play a decisive role. Associated Press notes that during his meeting with Chernomyrdin, Clinton used somewhat more moderate words than usual. Associated Press says that Chernomyrdin could soon bring to Belgrade the US proposal, which is largely harmonized with the 4 principles outlined by Belgrade. Chinese media report the statement of Viktor Chernomyrdin after his meeting at the White House that the diplomatic solution is at hand. The main news agency reports that one of the main topics discussed was the stopping of the bombardment. Great publicity was given to the efforts of the U.S. religious leader Jesse Jackson that led to the release of the 3 soldiers and his urging to use these goodwill gestures to further the political dialogue. Unlike Clinton's administration, U.S. Republican leaders think that the visit of Viktor Chernomyrdin, the release of the U.S. soldiers, and the letter from Yeltsin to Clinton are a good ground to seek political solution. And this chance should not be missed. Washington Times says that Clinton, a draft Draft dodger from the Vietnam era acts as a military chief now, expecting to be believed when he speaks about his war in the Balkans. This is a man who was subject to impeachment process due to sexual scandals, and now he's seeking moral authority through war. Among those who are announcing an imminent end of the war against Yugoslavia is the NATO Secretary General Javier Solana, who spoke thus to the German weekly Der Spiegel. He added that NATO is willing to accept some compromise to further a political solution, noting that the alliance no longer insists on a complete withdrawal of the Yugoslav security forces from Kosovo. The airplanes of the criminal alliance today and throughout last night attacked numerous places in our country. This aggressor alliance attacked for the first time during the middle of the day Valjevo. There were two strong explosions near the Krušik factory. Today Valjevo was visited by Milomir Minić, President of the Citizens' Council at the National Assembly, and Dejan Kovačević, Minister of Urbanism. Together with local officials, they visited facilities that have been targets of this vicious NATO bombardment. Around 12 noon, three strong explosions shook Valjevo. During that time in Valjevo, there were tens of thousands of people walking through the streets and in the markets. In the middle of the day, this fascist alliance attacked the factory Krušik. Close to the factory, there were hundreds of workers trying to go through the rubble and clean it up from the previous bombardment. Half an hour later, NATO criminals attacked once again. In today's attack, 2 people have been severely injured. The criminal alliance attacked twice Vranje last night. The first attack came around 55 minutes after midnight, the second one around 3:30. 4 missiles exploded in the eastern part of town that has already been attacked several times. A lot of material damage to civilian facilities, many damaged roofs and broken windows in a residential area. There are many visible damages on the Agricultural Institute. Last night, around 9:10, which is somewhat earlier than usual customary attacks by NATO alliance, Kraljevo was again target. Out of the 10 missiles, several hit private houses. 2 missiles hit Gornji Lađici and Hemala villages, respectively. No injured persons were recorded because people had withdrawn from their houses. The attack would have lasted further if it hadn't been for the efficient air defense systems that forced the NATO criminals to flee soon after their second attack. 2 planes flying over the area commanded by the Major General Lazarević of the Pristina Corps, who was surveying the units, were hit by the anti-aircraft forces of Pristina Corps. These are parts of the American plane, type A-10 underboard, also known as tank blaster. This is the front of the engine and tells you that this was a direct hit right in the engine. And you can also see this from the armor of the engine area. You can see the opening that was created by the missile that hit this armor. This is the cooler of the engine. A-10 planes are with 2 engines, and they're armed by thermal-guided missiles. You can see also the ID plate here, the model number, A-10A, manufacturer code, series number, and the code. The epilogue of the yesterday's beastly bombardment of Kosovska Mitrovica by NATO planes is a tragic one. 2 people are dead, 44 are injured. There has been huge material damage. All injured people, including some children among them, have been treated in the medical center in Kosovska Mitrovica. The aggressor alliance once again attacked the area of Bujanovac several times yesterday. One could hear the explosions from the south and the southeastern end of town, and you could hear them from 8 to 6 at night. Once again, international law has been violated. The aggressor dropped cluster bombs. These are examples, samples of what was left after today's bombardment. These are cluster bombs prohibited by the Geneva Convention, MK82. Here is an example. You can see a lot of them. These are the containers, how these bombs actually reach the ground. And you can see here that their shelf life was over 2 years ago. The victim of this attack with obsolete arms near Bujanovac was once again humanity. In the evil attack of the NATO alliance on the bus full of passengers yesterday on the road Peć-Rožaje, 20 civilians were dead, while 43 have been injured. The bus carried civilians, mainly women, children and older people. The aggressor fascist alliance has committed once more a crime against innocent civilians. On the road Kula-Rože near Savina Voda, they hit a bus full of passengers of all ethnicities, primarily women and children, going to Podgorica in Montenegro. According to our information, 20 people are dead, 40 some are injured. The rescue efforts are complicated by the continued flights of the aggressor planes in the area. The attack occurred around 12:30 when 2 planes dropped on several occasions numerous missiles, including cluster bombs that are forbidden. And you can see that this complicates the rescue efforts even further. The injured people were assisted immediately. 43 were transferred to the Peć clinic. According to the doctors, a number of people are in critical condition. Doctors are fighting for their lives. The criminal air force of NATO, commanded by the so-called Democrats from the West, showed its real face once again. After bombing the TV Serbia building in Belgrade, they have now attacked the TV Serbia building in Novi Sad. Radio Television Serbia was once again target of a barbaric attack of the criminals of the NATO alliance. Last night, sometime before 10 o'clock at night, these NATO murderers destroyed the building of TV Serbia along the Danube River. They completely destroyed the transmission unit, the antennas, the editorial rooms. There is total destruction behind. This is one more testimony of a shameful, merciless crime against our country, orchestrated by the mad fascist cliques in Washington and Brussels. By attacking TV station in Novi Sad, these demented executioners tried to silence the truth about their crimes, unprecedented in history. They wanted to kill the voice of the public, and specifically on the 3rd of May, the International Day of Freedom of the Press. During the moment of this attack on Novi Sad TV, fortunately, no employees were in the building. Firefighting teams have managed, after a short fight with the fire, to localize it. The material damage, however, is huge. The explosion damaged a lot of residential objects near TV. Fortunately, we have no civilian injuries. The bombing of the TV building in Novi Sad is a most abhorrent crime against the voice of the public, its dignity and its importance in today's world. This was stated at the meeting of the Minister of Information Aleksandar Vučić with the editors of the main Vojvodina press and electronic media. All representatives of the media in Vojvodina condemned this barbaric attack by the NATO aggressor. It was also noted that these daily assaults on the people and facilities of our country, committed by the NATO machinery, are going to fail to destroy the unity of our country. It was also stressed that these bombs, which destroyed the TV station that showed programs in 6 languages, cannot destroy the good inter-ethnic relations in Vojvodina. The media in Vojvodina are ready and continue to work professionally so that the multi-ethnic community in Vojvodina can continue to be informed in their maternal mother tongues about everything that happens. The Minister of Information spoke in Novi Sad with managers and editors of the print and electronic media in this autonomous province of Vojvodina. They condemned this abhorrent act of bombardment of TV Novi Sad and concluded that the media of Vojvodina are ready and determined that even in hardest work conditions continue to carry out their professional mission. Chris Stone, one of the 3 U.S. soldiers that were released by the president of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milošević, this past Sunday without any conditions, left to the armed forces of Yugoslavia a brief note of thanks, noting that he would pray for a quick end of the war against our country. This was a handwritten note that he gave to his guards, asking them to publish it only after he and his colleagues would leave Yugoslavia, escorted by the U.S. Minister and Champion of Human Rights, Jesse Jackson. The letter reads, "Thank you to all the guards in this prison. Thank you for your kindness and respect. I have a lot of sympathy for the Serbian people after this, and I will continue to pray for peace and the end of this war. Thank you especially for the cigarettes you gave me. May God help you. Thank you very much. You're very kind." Stone wrote this message of thanks and support, uncommon for a prisoner of war, in English, except for 3 closing words in Serbian: "Sincerely, Chris Stone, a free man," which is also a kind of message of sorts that he sends by choosing such a specific ending. The regional committee of the Socialist Party of Serbia in Vojvodina notes that TV Novi Sad was a symbol of a harmonious and tolerant life of members of more than 20 ethnic groups that live in Vojvodina. The transmission of these programs in 6 languages enabled the citizens to exercise their rights and be informed in their mother tongue. The great significance of this television station was to increase the cultural heritage and as well provide timely and true information to all of the citizens of Vojvodina. All of the citizens of Vojvodina condemn this act of aggression that has not broken their unity. Their determination to protect their unity is stronger than the hate of the NATO aggressor. The citizens of Vojvodina, members of all ethnic and religious groups, expect that this barbaric act of murder of the voice of the public be condemned by all peace-loving people of the world. The Socialist Party of Belgrade knows that the aggressors are seeking more and more targets among innocent civilians, passengers on trains and buses, women and children fleeing their destroyed homes. These new cowboys of justice choose their targets as if they were playing a video game rather than with human destiny committing crime against humanity. Having corrupted their media and temporarily silenced the conscience of their representatives, they turn to TV Serbia, which has proofs and documents from the site of each event to show the lies not only of the spokesman but of the highest NATO officials. Hoping to conceal the traces of their crime after the building in Belgrade, they destroyed the TV building in Novi Sad, a city that is an ever greater symbol of suffering but also resistance. This destruction is also pointless. Our people will not give up now in this hardest time for their history. Their orientation towards peace remains. Their orientation towards good relations with all other people based on equality and respect for human rights. This is confirmed by the release of the enemy soldiers, while their compatriots dropped cluster bombs on buses and threatened with even greater bombing. The released soldiers confirmed they are better than their generals, capable to see better and further. This encourages us in a feeling that we're closer to peace, concludes the announcement of the City Board of the Socialist Party of Serbia. The Presidential Council of the Serbian Radical Party emphasizes that the NATO criminals in this brutal aggression against Yugoslavia have committed highest crimes against humanity and the people of a sovereign country. The daily killing and massacres of innocent civilians, supposedly mistakes, express the nature of these countries, members of NATO's. Serbian radicals show that all of the attacks of NATO against civilians are well conceived and calculated to instill fear and terror among the people of Yugoslavia. The Presidential Council of the Serbian Radical Party feels that the unity of the Serbs has never been greater. So is the case with the determination of the people, and this is the strongest defense against the NATO aggression. Serbian people have no other fatherland. They do not want anything else except keep whatever belongs to them. The Presidential Council of the Serbian Radical Party therefore says that Serbia, Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and all its citizens will win. They are especially esteeming the heroic battle of the Yugoslav security forces and military against this technically far superior NATO enemy and the criminals of the terrorist gangs in Kosovo. The high morale, the unity of the people, and the determination of every soldier and policeman to defend the fatherland is stronger than all modern means for mass destruction that are owned by these Nazis of the North Atlantic Alliance. Valjevo, even in daytime, is a target of beastly attacks. This was seen on the side by Milorad Bovic, Vice President of Serbia, who is also within the governing board of Yule Party. During the session of the Regional Yule Council, NATO hit Krušik factory in Valjevo with 3 missiles. Was this only a story about Kosovo? But now we see that Kosovo was just a gate for occupation of Serbia, just as occupied Serbia could be a gateway towards occupation of some parts of Europe. We were always for a peaceful solution of the Kosovo problem by political means and negotiations. Serbia and Federal Republic of Yugoslavia have never closed the door to negotiations. The door to negotiations was closed by those who were in a great hurry, who wanted to use bombs and occupation of Serbia in order to resolve this question and place their so-called peacekeeping troops in Kosovo. I want here to especially stress that the government of Serbia in few days will come out with a comprehensive, active social-economic program whose main task will be that not a single worker is left without livelihood, and that these parallel compatible programs, and of course Serbia is well known for such programs, will accomplish our primary task to gather the people, protect their existence and the existence of their families. By throwing missiles at factories, you were killing workers because these factories were their livelihood. We are very conscious of this, and we really hope that in few days we will have a comprehensive proposal that will help all of the people who have suffered in this destruction so that we can protect them and protect their families. NATO crimes against civilians are growing, especially now with the growing chances for a peaceful solution of the Kosovo crisis. Stated at today's press conference, the president of the Serbian Renewal Party, Vuk Drašković, he added that he hopes NATO hawks are at the end of their deadly mission and that peace is imminent, but only under the conditions stated earlier by our federal government: not to separate Kosovo from Serbia, to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Serbia, with a large degree of autonomy for the Albanians and return of the refugees to Kosovo. Drašković said that NATO command cannot be world's government and that somebody will have to answer for the murder of civilians and all of the innocent victims of this aggression. He greeted the decision of President Milosevic on the unconditional release of the 3 U.S. soldiers, calling it a goodwill gesture that accords with our military honor and tradition. He expressed his esteem for Reverend Jesse Jackson and his efforts towards peace. The Kosovo Democratic Initiative, party of ethnic Albanians, expresses strongest condemnation of NATO criminals who have in the last 7 days alone killed and massacred around 100 people in Kosovo, mostly women and children, wounding several hundreds more. These mindless murders are just part of the crime of NATO in our sovereign country, aimed to show that Clinton and his puppets fight for human rights of the Albanians and the New World Order, announced Kosovo Democratic Initiative. By attacking another media center, the Novi Sad television, these planners of murder in the NATO headquarters show once again that they're especially concerned with media war, and that this war is conducted under the motto, bombs against the media. When they learn that peace can have a chance if you give peace a chance and not to war, only then can we hope for peace. This is stated by the Democratic Party of Serbia. The governing board of the Journalists Association of Serbia states once again that the priority target of NATO is obviously the truth. This was confirmed by yesterday's attack against Novi Sad television, but the truth will never be stopped. The Association of Journalists says once again that the so-called NATO Democrats showed in a most morbid way what is the meaning of the 3rd of May, the World Day for Freedom of the Press. The Journalist Association of Serbia will talk about this tomorrow with the General Secretary of Journalist Association, Adrian White, who is coming to Belgrade. The Patriotic Council of Serbia condemns these increasing monstrous attacks of NATO executioners, especially the attack on the bus Peć Rožaja, which led to the death of so many innocent civilians, whether they were Albanians, Muslims, Serbs or Montenegrins. The Patriotic Council of the Serbs expresses their highest esteem for the armed forces of Yugoslavia and for President Milosevic, who decided to release the 3 U.S. soldiers. And they also speak of the fascination that our country receives more and more throughout the world. Throughout the world, there are more and more protests against the aggression on Yugoslavia. About 5,000 people in front of the Bulgarian parliament protested against the decision regarding the permission that was going to be given to the NATO aggressor to use the airspace of Bulgaria. In Sweden, numerous Serbs, but also Swedes, are organizing protests. Swedish government doesn't allow these protests to take place every day, and they limit the space where these demonstrations can take place. In Austria last night in Vienna, there was yet another protest of Serbs who sent an appeal to all of the countries in the international community and NATO to stop this aggression against Yugoslavia. They also sent a message to the people of Yugoslavia to persevere in the defense. In Denmark, a new association has been established, Danish-Yugoslav Association for Peace, that will try to collect humanitarian assistance for the people of Yugoslavia. Throughout Holland, our citizens organized demonstrations and protests to express their support for Yugoslavia. This was organized already several times by the Association of Yugoslavs in Holland, numerous clubs of Yugoslavs in many towns in the Netherlands, from many parts of this country. In the administrative center of Holland, The Hague, there were several thousand demonstrators from the Netherlands and several other European countries. On Monday, the 3rd of May, a delegation of the European Community for Protection of Serbian Rights, headquartered in Paris and presided over by Mr. Sima Mravovic, gave an indictment appeal to the Hague Tribunal against NATO criminals, NATO officials who have committed heinous crimes against humanity. Afterwards, they held a press conference. On Sunday, the 9th of May, a Dutch organization known as Global Reflections and known for its engagement against the war in Vietnam, Nicaragua and Cuba, is also preparing a protest meeting under the motto NATO, Leave the Balkans. Numerous progressive parties in Holland support this initiative, but also several other associations of Kurds, Turks, and other ethnic groups. This movement is supported by numerous Serbian organizations, including Serbian Cultural Center and the Association